there, beautiful people. I hope you have all had a safe week. Today's video is possibly one of the craziest stories I have ever heard. I was watching a guy called Mr Ballen here on YouTube. Go check him out. I think I have binged at least 4 years worth of videos so far. He is amazing. He's a fantastic storyteller, and he tells stories about the dark and the mysterious. So if you haven't checked him out, I really, really recommend it. And I will leave you a link down below so you can find him without any problems. Anyway, he told this story and it creeped the absolute hell out of me. I went away, it was still in my brain, it was still stuck. So of course I had to look into it further. I wanted more information about it. I wanted to know if it was a true story. And yeah, it is. So sit back, get yourself comfy, and join me for a glimpse into a darker reality. Our story starts on the 15th of May 1970 with the birth of a young boy called Daniel LaPlante. Daniel's parents did split up quite soon after his birth, so Daniel grew up with his mum, his stepdad, and 2 half-brothers. It's reported that the house was not the most hygienic of places. It was a bit grubby, and that there were animals, like stray animals, coming and going from the house all the time. And it would seem that Daniel followed suit with this. He was a grubby teenager. It's the best way you can describe him. He had dark, greasy hair. I think it was quite long as well, so it was just kind of hung. You know when it's just greasy and no life and it just hangs. So yeah, and apparently he had a little bit of an odour, so a grubby teenager. Nothing uncommon about a grubby teenager, let's be honest. He didn't have many friends at school. He was described as a bit of a loner, and he did have some difficulties. He was diagnosed with dyslexia, and so he found it quite difficult at school. When he was a teenager, he was also referred to a psychiatrist, and over the space of a year, he was then diagnosed with hyperactivity, which would nowadays be attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and would explain why he found things difficult at school. I mean, trying to concentrate alone has got to be difficult. There are many stories out there about Daniel and his childhood, and years after this event, Daniel actually claimed that he was abused as a child by his stepdad and his psychiatrist, but this has never been brought in front of court. There's no evidence to support the claims, so we don't know if there's any basis to this or not. But there have also been claims against him that he used to torture animals, and that he abused young girls when he was young, not underage, not in a paedophilic way because he was also a child, but he was just abusive. But again, these claims don't have any hard evidence behind them, so we can't say if those rumours are true or not. However, what we do know is that as a child, he started breaking and entering into people's homes. This wasn't purely to steal things either. He wasn't necessarily breaking into homes to rob them. There was the odd occasions where he would take things, but they seem more to have been like trophies than anything else. A lot of the time though, he broke in to fuck with people. It's the nicest way I can think to put it. He would move things just so they knew someone had been there. I think it kind of, in my brain, it kind of goes with the whole, abusing people. You move things to let that person know that you have violated their personal area. But there's nothing they can do about it because you haven't stolen anything. It must have been one hell of a power trip, but that's all I can think. When Daniel was 16, he came across the phone number of a young girl called Bowen. Again, there are different stories as to how he came across the number. Some people say that Tina liked to hand out her telephone number in the hope of finding new friends. And some people like to say that Daniel stalked her and found her telephone number. I'm assuming it may have been in like a directory inquiries telephone book. You have to remember this is the 1980s. There was no internet. There was no MySpace or Facebook or whatever. There was no way of talking to strangers without giving them your phone number. So I can actually believe it from both sides. I could imagine a girl handing her phone number out to a couple of people and then that being handed out to their friends and their friends and their friends. But I can also imagine Daniel stalking Tina. How he got hold of the number isn't the important part of the story. What is important is that Tina and Daniel actually struck up a friendship over the phone. He told her that he was 6 foot tall, blonde, the captain of his football team. Like, he was the original catfish. He totally catfished this poor girl. But they developed a friendship. They obviously got on over the phone. And after a short while, Tina actually agreed to go on a date with him. Now, I don't know what he expected to happen when she turned up. Because, you know, he's not 6 foot tall. He's 5'8". He's not blonde. He's got dark, greasy fucking hair. And he doesn't play sport. He's not sporty. He was quite a skinny bloke. He wasn't. So what he was expecting Tina's reaction to be, I have no idea. But anyway, they arranged to go on this date. And obviously when she arrived, he was not what she was expecting at all. But fair play to her, she actually went on the date. She kind of decided that their friendship was good enough that she wanted to go on the date with him and get to know him a bit better. And like I give her credit for that, because there's not a lot of people that would do that. There's a lot of people that would be offended. But she obviously saw that he was self-conscious about the way he looked. Otherwise, why would he lie? So they went on this date. However, it may have turned out to be the worst decision, one of the worst decisions that Tina ever made. Tina confided in Daniel and told him about the loss of her mum from the year before. Her mum unfortunately passed away from cancer in 1985, and of course that meant that her and her sister Karen, as well as their dad Frank, lost a massive part of their lives. But instead of being sympathetic, Daniel spent the night asking things about her mum's death. He asked her things like, how did you and your sister feel the moment that she died? How did she look in the exact moment she died? Really horrific things that you should never ask somebody. She managed to cut the date short and pledged to herself that she was going to stop talking to him. She was never going to see him again. For her, that was the end of the story. For Daniel, it was the beginning of an obsession. Now, as I mentioned, in 1985, Tina's mum did pass away. And unfortunately, it meant that Frank, her dad, ended up working longer hours. He was like literally working all the hours he could possibly get, which meant that Tina and Karen, her younger sister, were at home quite a lot on their own. Now, like, I did, from a parent point of view, I did worry, but then I looked at their ages and it's not a problem, because Tina would have been 14 when her mum passed away, so she is of a good age to be at home looking after her sister. I mean, I think you can even babysit from the age of 14. So from that side of things, it's not a bad thing, but obviously it meant the girls didn't have their dad around as much as they would like. So there was one evening kind of time, and the girls were missing their mum, and they decided to actually try to do a seance. They wanted to try and contact their mum, so they set out the candles. They got a Ouija board out. I mean, this is the 80s. There's a high chance most kids had a Ouija board in the 80s, because they were a safe toy to play with, and you could just buy them. I think even somewhere like Mattel frickin' made them. So the girls got out their Ouija board, they got out their candles, and they tried to talk to their mum. At the time, nothing happened. Nothing happened. So they put the board away, blew out the counters. I think they tried for like an hour, but they managed to put it all away and tidy up before their dad got home, got on with their chores, and then went about their evening. When they went to bed, however, they heard knocking. Both children heard knocking. It was like it was in the walls, like someone knocking on the walls. And they excitedly thought that they had got hold of their mum. They thought their mum was trying to contact them, and she was saying that they were safe and that she was watching over them. So they went to bed happy that night. But this went on for weeks and weeks. The knocking became more frequent. Sometimes it would sound fast, sometimes it would be slow, sometimes it would sound like harassed, like angry banging. And so the girls went from wondering if it was their mum to worrying that maybe they'd let a evil presence into their house by doing the Ouija board. Frank never heard a thing. The banging only, or the knocking and the banging, it only happened when Frank wasn't there. He didn't hear a thing. So after a few months, the girls were home alone. It was the evening, and they heard the knocking. And this time it sounded like it was coming from the basement. So, grabbing a kitchen knife, which, hats off to that child, grabbing a kitchen knife, they went downstairs to the basement to see if they could find what was making the noise. While down there, they found nothing. They found nobody down there, no entities down there, not even a rat, like banging into something, nothing. They found nothing. So they turned around to go back up the stairs, and as they did, they saw sprawled in shaving foam on the wall, "I'm in your room, come and find me." Now, I'm not going to lie, I would poop my pants, leave the house and never come back. But that's me. There are some stories that it was actually written in ketchup, so it looked like blood. But from first-hand accounts, we learnt that it was shaving foam. It was shaving foam on the walls. But even so, the message, absolutely terrifying. So they called their dad at work. He came home. He comforted them. But he didn't believe them. He didn't believe that they didn't do it. So he said that he would get them some grief counselling. Now, if you've ever watched a horror film, that's pretty much the answer that a parent is going to give you. There, don't worry, we'll get you some grief counselling. It's obviously your brain playing tricks on you. So he followed that. So that was the end of that. Now, a little while later, I believe it was in October. So this started in March, by the way, March of 1986. Now, I think it was in October that we're looking at. There was a day when Frank took the girls and one of their friends called Kathleen out for a day, and they had a great day, and they came home full of the joys. And when they opened the front door, they walked into the house, and it was just a mess, absolute mess. It looked like it'd been ransacked, and the kids were instantly, "Oh my god, it's the demon entity. We've let a demon into the house. Look, he's trashed the place." And Frank didn't believe them. He thought that they somehow must have trashed the house. And was like, "Oh yes, it's definitely a demon. Ooh, maybe it's an intruder." And he started to walk around downstairs, and he was throwing open doors like, "Oh no, the intruder's been in here too." And he did this at every door. He was being incredibly sarcastic. Didn't believe the children whatsoever, and was being very obvious about it. He was trying to get them to confess while doing it. And what he didn't expect was he threw open the hallway closet door and came face to face with Daniel LaPlante. Daniel was in the closet with something smeared on his face. Face paint, a mask. We're not entirely sure there are lots of different stories out there. Whatever he had on his face, it obscured how he looked because Tina didn't recognize him at all. And the most important part, he was wielding a machete. Hey, so this is Future Roxy. Please excuse, I do have a really bad cold. But he didn't have a machete. This is a machete. He didn't have one of these. He had a hatchet. This is a hatchet. This is what he had. So he ushered everybody upstairs. There are stories that he chased people around. Whether he chased them around the house or not, he made them go upstairs into one of the bedrooms. Now, Frank made sure that the children were in front of him, and he made them go in to the bedroom door first. And then, very quick thinking, as Frank went over the threshold, he managed to shut the door. And then they quickly barricaded it. So they had a barrier between them and Daniel on the outside. They then opened one of the windows, and Frank lowered Tina out of the window so she could run to the neighbours and call 911. But when the police arrived, they saw Frank at the window, and he said, he's gone. The guy has gone. So they helped Frank and the children out of the bedroom window. They didn't take them through the house because obviously they didn't know where he was. So they made sure the family were away from the house, and then the police went in. And while the police were in the house, apart from the mess, they didn't find Daniel anywhere. He had just disappeared. I think there were even rumours of it had snowed and there were no footprints or anything. The guy just vanished out into thin air. So obviously, as a parent and as just a human being with self-preservation skills, Frank took the children and himself and went to stay at somebody's house. I believe they stayed at Frank's eldest daughter's house. But either way, they left. They weren't going to stay in the house. So we now fast forward 2 days later. Oh no, this was in December, not October. My apologies, December. 2 days later, Frank went back to the property. I believe he went back to get some toiletries and some stuff that the family needed. And as he pulled up, he saw Daniel in the window. Just in the window. He could see him. The guy was walking around the house, just making himself at home. So Frank instantly called the police. The police came over. And they searched the house again. So once again, they found nothing. They couldn't find Daniel anywhere. And just before they were about to leave, a police officer was in the basement, and he noticed that there was a fake wall. This fake wall was used to hide pipes. Do you know how you box pipes in? So it was just boxed in, but it was removable to be able to get in there. And there was actually a bit of a cubby hole in that space as well, not just the pipes. And so he moved the wall, and on the floor was just a pile of what he thought was dirty clothing. And so he looked closer, and as he got closer to it, he saw an arm. So he grabbed the arm and pulled Daniel LaPlante out from the hole. So Daniel had been living in the wall of Tina's house for 9 months. Started in March, he was found in December. It was 9 months. Now, he wasn't there permanently, but he was coming and going as he pleased. And God knows how many other houses he was doing this in as well, by the way. But yeah, so he was coming and going for 9 months until he was found. So he was arrested, and then he was charged with breaking and entering, 4 counts of armed assault, larceny up to $100, and destruction of property. Now, because he was 17, they wanted to try him as an adult, which meant that he was detained at Juvenile Detention Centre And the idea, I believe, was to detain him until he was 18 and then have his trial. While he was in the juvenile detention centre, he was appointed a defence lawyer called Andrew Gustafson. But for reasons that we don't know, Daniel fired him and hired a different lawyer. One of my thoughts on this was that Daniel's house backed onto some woods, and on the other side of the woods was actually the Gustafsons' house. And I wondered if maybe Andrew knew too much about Daniel and therefore, like, conflict of interests, maybe. But I'm not sure. All we know is that he was, and then he wasn't. So while Daniel was at the juvenile detention centre, people were unaware of his violent side. He came across as like a nice, misunderstood young man. So he was granted bail. And his mum posted the bail as soon as she could. So Daniel went home and instantly went back to his ways. He was breaking and entering into numerous properties. And he even stole 2 handguns from somewhere, and he told his stepdad that he had bought them. But that was the only thing that his stepdad questioned. He didn't ask him why he had handguns or anything like that. He literally was just, I bought them, and then his stepdad left him alone. So there was chances that what happened after that could have been prevented. Unfortunately, they weren't. So this is where the story, unfortunately, takes an even darker turn. On the 1st of December 1987, so a year after he had been arrested at the Bowen's house, Daniel broke into the house of Andrew Gustafson. Remember the guy I just talked about, the defense lawyer that he fired? His house. Andrew lived with his wife Priscilla, who was pregnant at the time, and their 2 children, Abigail and William. I couldn't find anywhere a reason why. I couldn't find any evidence or anything, any testament from Daniel to say why this house. So if he was his defense lawyer, did Andrew do something that annoyed Daniel? And that's the reason this happened? I don't know. It feels like a very senseless crime at the moment to me. So Daniel broke into the house, and the people that were at home were Priscilla and William at the time. He tied up Priscilla. I believe he tied her up in her bedroom. And he took William into one of the family bathrooms. He then proceeded to drown William in in the bathtub, while his mum was tied up next door having to listen to whatever sounds were made. And it's just horrendous to think that somebody could do that. I think William was only 5 years old, and it's just horrendous just to think about it. Once William had passed, Daniel then proceeded to essay Priscilla. There were condoms found at the property that had Daniel's DNA in the inside of them. And when he was finished, he then shot Priscilla twice in the head, killing her and her unborn baby at the same time. And then, as he was getting ready to leave, Abigail, who was 7, came home from school. She came into the house, and so Daniel ended up taking her to a different family bathroom, and proceeded to drown her as well. He then stole the nameplate off the side of the house. This is what I meant by trophies. He stole the nameplate off of the house, and then left, ran away. So in the evening, Andrew came home and discovered his wife's body. He then called 911 and waited outside. He was asked why he didn't go looking for his children, and I completely get the reason. He just didn't want to be the person to have to find them. He knew that they were gone. There were no noises in the house. He couldn't bring himself to go look for them, and yeah, as a mum, like, I can see that. I can see both sides of it. One side of it, you want to know what happened to your kids, but the other side is, like, if you knew that they were dead, could you bring yourself to go look for them? LaPlante was tracked down by the police using police dogs, and they discovered evidence in the woods that I mentioned earlier, the woods that were between Daniel's and Andrew's houses. They managed to find a shirt that had Daniel's DNA on it, and wrapped in the shirt were a pair of gloves that were wrapped up in the shirt were a pair of gloves that were allegedly used for the murders, and were still wet at the time from the murders of the children. Also in the shirt was the nameplate that was taken from the side of the house. So he had obviously stashed his little trophy, I would assume with the intention of going back for it. Ugh, the guy just gives me the biggest creeps. But yeah, after a manhunt of a day, they managed to arrest Daniel. When they'd gone to his house the day before, he had escaped out of a window and then gone on the run. But they found him, apparently they found him in a bin. But yes, he was located a day afterwards, and he was arrested. Then on the 25th of October 1988, Daniel was found guilty of all 3 murders, and he was sentenced to 3 life sentences to be served consecutively. Since then, he has made a few attempts to have his sentence reduced, or for him to have a chance of parole, because of laws that have been passed since. But as of now, which is September 2025, I even had to look at the date. How bad is that? He is still behind bars. So that brings us to the end of that incredibly fucked up case. If you haven't done so already, make sure you click the subscribe button so you don't miss my next video. I hope you all have a safe week. Be kind to yourselves, be kind to each other, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.